hologram. A new card. What do you think?
But that's nothing. Look at this. That is really nice. But wait, you ain't seen nothing. Something wrong? You're sweating.
If you've been around the Claire Fluffle channel for long enough, you'll know that I really love me some Parasol. It's a fun ability that's always stuck with me throughout the years. It's always fun, but despite looking like a joke, it's seriously strong in most Kirby games. It also has some traits about it that are completely unique, like protecting Kirby from above at all times and slowly floating down when you're in the air. You can use that second part to do some funny things like... But no matter my mood, I can always come back to Parasol for a great time. It's like... Alfred from Fire Emblem Engage. I have a quota to fill, okay? That is until Kirby's return to Dream Land Deluxe. Before I start, I have to preface this. I think the game is very fun. Me likey. It's Return to Dreamland. I gotta likey. I feel like I'm sworn under oath to love anything that's Return to Dreamland related. Except that. But if I can level with all of you wonderful people for a second, my favorite modes in most Kirby games have pretty consistently been the boss rushes. Maybe it's just because I'm a speedrunning snob, and having your time tracked on how quickly you can demolish bosses makes me a very happy puppy. How many different accents was that? Oh my god. Or how it highlights how cool and in-depth Kirby's gameplay and boss fights really are. And while there's usually a clear-cut best ability, nothing is stopping you from using whatever ability you want. One ability, all of the abilities, the world is your oyster! Or the world is your fatty puffer! It's not an oyster, it's the closest thing I can think of right now, okay? Alright, that didn't make any sense. But looking at the boss rush modes, you'd probably assume that Parasol really doesn't have that much going for it. It's an umbrella. What are you gonna do? Grab a boss and invite them for a walk under it? That actually sounds pretty great. Star Allies really should have done something like that. Anyway, Parasol is a surprisingly lethal ability in a fair amount of Kirby games for beating bosses. Rarely is it the best, or really in the top 5 or anything, but it's even managed to scratch that surface a surprising amount of times. It's pretty high up in games like Superstar Ultra, Triple Deluxe, where it's getting very close to that #1 spot, and is one of the best abilities in... Hey! Look at that! The original Return to Dreamland! So to really look at why Parasol hurts so much in Return Deluxe, we need to look at Parasol as a whole first. What are its moves? What is it good at? What is it bad at? And why should you give this video a like, comment, and ring the notification bell after subscribing to be notified whenever I upload? Well, that last one's actually very easy. It really helps me out, and it lets me know that you enjoy what I upload. If you're feeling really generous, you can check out my Patreon in the description for some super cool rewards. And you can be called a Puptrin! Wow. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Parasol isn't just some weird joke. It actually does have a lot of cool and fun moves that are really helpful for moving through levels and beating bosses. Parasol Swing, its normal attack, has huge range and, considering its speed, does pretty good damage to boot. Parasol Drill, its dash attack, does lots of hits and, if timed correctly, can be used repeatedly out of a short hop. Great for getting somewhere fast while looking stylish. Parasol Dive, its aerial ground slam bam wham attack, is really strong and typically gives Kirby complete invincibility against enemies while using it. Parasol Twirl, its grounded slam bam whatever, is a super fast multi-hit move that can absolutely decimate bosses when used correctly. And by used correctly, I mean to quote a friend who also enjoys Parasol, like how a 5-year-old would use it. Just run up and go. What makes Parasol good isn't necessarily the variety of attacks that it has, but rather how the few attacks that it does have work together to deal a lot of damage. More often than not, Twirl is enough to deal with everything, but even before we slaughtered every living creature in our path by moves like Parasol Dive dealt great damage, while others, like Circus Throw and Parasol Swing, were more situationally useful but still picked up the slack. Everything fit together really nicely, like a Thanksgiving dinner when you're the one focusing on the food instead of the dysfunctional family. My family was actually surprisingly functional, but funny ha-has, right? Gotta make these videos funny, right? Actually, okay, seriously though, Thanksgiving dinner slaps! So with all of that said, we make it to the main point of the video. Finally. Parasol in Return Deluxe hurts to use. It hurts my very soul, the essence of my being. All of that is pupper VTuber lady who likes to splash enemies with a dry umbrella. Don't ask me how that works. So what happened to Parasol to make it so painful? Well, for starters, we need to look at what's surrounding Parasol. As much as I love it, Parasol is only a small piece of the greater picture that is Kirby, and even more specifically, Return to Dream Land Deluxe. Or even more specifically, we're getting to the real nitty-gritty here, Return Deluxe True Arena. They could have easily called this the Truest Arena, and nobody would bat an eye because there's over 20 boss fights for some reason. Good thing Kirby's got some new tricks up their sleeve, you know, like... Aw. But the increase of bosses in this mode is one of the big issues that Parasol has. Despite everything that I've said in Parasol's favor, it typically doesn't do very well against bosses who are always in the air. There aren't usually that many of these in Kirby, and many of the ones who hide in the air, like cowards, drop close enough to the ground for Parasol to be able to do its thing. With these new bosses, notably the one we adore, Electricy Duder, as well as the extra Doomer fights and some of the more seriously spoilery fights towards the end, they really love to stay out of reach where Parasol shines brightest. Older bosses, like the Sphere Doomer and Landia, still cause big issues as well. But even when fighting bosses on the ground, Parasol is a shell of its former self. Or it's sitting on the used shelf for a heavily discounted price. I don't know, metaphors are weird. Parasol's main method of dealing crazy damage in the original game, Parasol Twirl, was heavily nerfed coming into this. Notably, it only hits bosses 4 times instead of 5. That sounds like nothing, but it is, trust me. Losing that damage piles up fast with an attack as speedy and destructive as this. And why shouldn't? I twirl in dresses all the time, and I can confirm I'm at my most violently destructive when doing so. Also, this art is so cute, I love it! But maybe I could deal with the nerfs okay enough if the quick kills that you used to be able to get on bosses working because of that. Quick kills that Parasol could get in the original felt great because they were still really close and tight, but they felt amazing. Save at least 10 to 15 seconds on a bosses. Oftentimes you could save more, being realistic. Here, they're possible, but they're really difficult and really out there, and not in a way that feels satisfying. I could imagine if you had to think of this crazy solution that used multiple of Parasol's moves, in particular ones that you don't see very often, for some super imaginative fix, that would be great. But instead, it just feels largely similar to what you did in the original, just needlessly difficult. What hurts this even more is that, hey, this is the quote-unquote true-est arena, so you have to fight so many bosses, and you have to play so well, just in order to not die in pain. Now, to be fair, a lot of abilities also receive nerfs in this game, and I do like that the meta, so to speak, is completely different from what it used to be. I just don't understand why abilities needed to be nerfed in the first place. They already reverted boss invulnerability back to how it was in the original game, compared to something like Robobot, where it just doesn't exist. I know, I'm still talking about this. So it doesn't even feel that different. And this is actually something that affects abilities other than Parasol, but because it affects Parasol specifically in a negative way, it's bad and I don't like it. I don't make the rules, I just make them. Because of all of the changes and additions, Parasol feels weak against the new bosses, because it is, while still feeling weak against the old bosses. Even if it isn't super weak versus the old ones, when you see how strong it used to be, it just makes you feel kind of bad. I'm not gonna pull any metaphors for this one, you just feel bad. And I know I'm gonna get an inevitable comment or 2 or 10 saying I only feel this way because I am a speedrunner, or something along the lines of, oh, well, casually, this is fine. But that's the thing, even if you don't know all of this, which you will because Parasol against the new Doomers is complete and utter misery, playing around with other abilities winds up being the final nail in the coffin. Despite it still feeling like Parasol, and to me, even then, I kind of immediately noticed that something was off, it feels so much worse than the abilities around it. Sand is already infamous for how easily it destroys everything, but other contesters like Mennonite, Dedede, Ninja, Hammer, Wink, so many examples that can still handle what the True Arena throws at them well enough. While Parasol struggles to get good times against bosses, it could do just fine against like 5 minutes ago. Not to mention the problems that it already has and the new bosses that it struggles with. When I streamed my first attempts of the True Arena, I can't even begin to tell you how many people told me to use literally any other ability than Parasol. I remember one specific comment of somebody saying, "Wow, I can't believe you're still using an honest ability." Ouch! I didn't listen. I'm just addicted to Parasol. Please send help. But even basic word of mouth is getting out fast that Parasol just isn't it this go around. Now, you may also be wondering, what about the regular arena and what about the main game? It's not as bad for either of those, but I definitely think it still struggles to be fun, especially compared to the other abilities. One of my biggest complaints before it came out is that Parasol Drill, the dash attack, while still being a good dash attack, still has the hit lag on every individual hit of its dash attack. That's kind of something that I was looking forward to being changed because, while I love hit lag, you don't need it on every single hit of a multi-hit dash attack that's kinda weak. So not only did that not get fixed, but in the original, if you held down while doing a second dash attack in the air, you could do another dash attack. Wow! How come HAL lets you have 2 dash attacks in the air? It doesn't! Yep, they got rid of it, and you can only do 1 Parasol Drill in the air again. Yay! Okay, so I want to reiterate, while this is a big problem that I have with Parasol, and ergo Return Deluxe, I still think the game is really, really fun. I definitely have some other problems with it. I'm still happy to play the game whenever I get the chance. And hey, Parasol might not be great, but the Magolor Epilogue is right there. It's fantastic to finally see Dedede specifically, and not Hammer, be this insanely good. And unlike Star Allies, it's probably not going to go anywhere. And unlike the True Arena, Dedede is actually better than Sand in the regular arena, so he actually gets time in the spotlight. I'm really happy for him. Other favorite abilities of mine, like Fire, still excel in categories like 100% too, so I'm more than willing to still say that this is an amazing experience, a very fun speed game, and worth playing for any Kirby fan out there. If you're like me, though, and have a clear-cut favorite that can single-handedly impact your enjoyment of a Kirby game, be wary. Parasol was always so wonderful for me, since it looks and sounds like such a dumb joke, and you guys know how much I love my dumb jokes, right? Like, I mean, seriously, who would actually bring an umbrella to a fight and win even harder than, I don't know, it's the end of the video. You guys could think of an overpowered character to put in there. Let me know in the comments below. I am too sad. Seeing Parasol effectively reduced to the exact thing that you'd expect a Parasol to be really hurts in a way I wish I could have conveyed to you in under 15 minutes. I don't know, guys. It's like seeing Alfred in the Fell Xenologue of Fire Emblem Engage. Go watch my Alfred video, he's a puppy!